Welcome, everybody. Welcome. Thank you for joining me. Today, I'm going to answer the question, what is the best freight broker cold calling script? All right. So that's a big topic to cover. It's a question I get all the time. So welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining me. This is my Freight Broker Bootcamp live training that I do every week, Mondays at noon. And I appreciate you joining me. If you're catching this on replay, like a lot of folks, hit me up in the comments with hashtag replay. If you're catching this live, hit me up in the comments with the city and state you're logging in from. We'll try to do some shout outs to everybody before we do the training. The agenda is going to go like that. So we're going to do the shout outs. Then we're going to jump into the training. And then from there, we're going to go into live Q&A at the end. All right. So that's the agenda. That's what we're going to do. That's what we're going to cover. I hope you guys are excited and ready. Again, I do these live trainings for free every Monday at noon. So if you appreciate these live trainings, if you've ever learned anything from my past trainings, if you want me to continue to do these free live trainings, hit the like button no matter where you're at now, whether that be on LinkedIn or Facebook or YouTube or wherever you're at. And I appreciate it. I truly appreciate it. Thank you so much. So welcome, everybody. Thank you for being here. Welcome, Misha. Live, I think. You are live. Yes, you are. It is Monday, the 28th at 12:02 p.m. Eastern. So yes, you are live. Again, for those of you that are just joining me, hit me up in the comments with the city and state you're logging in from. I'll do some shout outs and then we will jump right in. Okay. Now it's probably going to be a small group on the line because I didn't even send an email out to everybody. Normally I send an email out with these lives. So we're going to see who the real loyal fans are, who follow and know that I do these every Mondays and they're looking forward to it. So we have Brian from Independence, Oregon. Welcome. Maya from Texas. Misha, welcome. Corey from Billings. Trucker Chicago 07 from McDonough, Georgia. Cool. Awesome. Love it. Love it, love it, love it. So I have a lot of notes to go over. A page and a half of notes, which is really unusual. Normally I can contain everything onto a page or a half page kind of outline. But we got a lot to go over today. And if you stick around to the end, I have a free download for you. A free download which will summarize basically everything we're going to go over on this call. All right? And you will actually walk away with an actual a freight broker cold calling script that you can use to differentiate yourself and stand out from the crowd. All right. So that's my promise to you. We have Joe from Fort Lauderdale. We got Lewis from Satellite Beach, Florida. We got Joseph from Medford, Oregon. Awesome. People from all over the place. Well, listen, I'm happy that you're here. I appreciate you being here. I know it's time to it's hard to take time out of the middle of your day sometimes to dedicate to these trainings, but I do appreciate it. And just know if for some reason you missed, you can catch them on replay, whether they be on Facebook or LinkedIn or YouTube. And let me just take a quick review and make sure I got exactly what I'm going to be doing here. And let me get a quick drink and then we'll jump in. All right. All right, cool. So what is the best freight broker cold calling script? You know, that's a question I get all the time. Dennis, what's the best freight broker cold calling script? How do I do freight broker cold calling? Does freight broker cold calling still work? Well, I'm here to tell you that it does work, but you have to have the right strategy. You have to have the right skills in order to make it work, right? So here's what I'm going to say. The hardest part about cold calling as a freight broker is the first 5 to 15 seconds of that cold call, where the objective is to get your prospect's attention. Okay? The key here is you have to get their attention. So why do people struggle so much and get immediate rejections? Well, it's because they've heard the same old cold call script time and time again, right? It's usually some old school, generic, outdated sales script that I hear everybody using, and I don't know why. probably because that's what they were taught by their boss and that's what their boss was taught. And maybe it's something they found on YouTube or found in some course. And, the fact is, these old school cold calling scripts are very bad for business. And the reality is they just don't work. Okay. So I'm going to share a couple of those really bad scripts with you. And then I'm going to share with you what I consider to be one of the best cold calling scripts to get your prospects' attention. And I'm going to give you a link to a free download. All right. Where you can download the actual script. So let's start in. All right. So some of the old school scripts that you need to stop using or that are very outdated are things like, hi, John, this is, hi, John. Let me start over. Hi, John, this is Joe with XYZ, and we have trucks in your area, blah, 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 right? Everybody's heard that old school freight broker script. Or maybe it's, hi, John, my name's Joe with XYZ. We can save you money on your freight, blah, 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 right? Or maybe it's, hi, John, it's Joe with XYZ. We have access to a network of over 10,000 trucks, blah, 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 right? So those are the old school, outdated freight broker cold calling scripts that I strongly suggest you stop using, okay? Now, the problem with those scripts is if you say the wrong words to enough people, right, to thousands of people, you'll eventually uncover a diamond in the rough, okay? And that periodically they will work. But the reality is there's a very low return on investment. So I'm going to share with you the script. And remember, if you stick around to the end, I'm actually going to give you a link where you can download that script, okay? So how do you get somebody's attention? How do you interrupt their pattern? Well, let me tell you a quick story. Not long ago, I got a cold call from a guy who was trying to sell me sales training. Of all things, he was trying to sell me sales training. Now, I'm not beyond learning, but the reality is I'm not in the market to buy sales training. And so, but he hit me with a very interesting opening to that cold call. I had never requested information from him. I had never heard of him. I had never went to his website. I had never had any connection with this person, but they called me out of the blue and they had an interesting pitch. They had an interesting cold call intro. So what I've done is and it got my attention. It interrupted my pattern and it allowed him to navigate the sales call to the point where I actually heard what he was saying. I listened to what he was saying. And unfortunately for him, I wasn't in the market to buy sales training, but we left it on a very positive note where I told him he could follow up with me in the future and that I'd love to stay in contact with him. Okay. So I've adapted that cold call script to the freight brokerage industry, and I want to share it with you guys today. I have shared it with my inner circle group, with my VIP clients, but I'm going to share it with you today. So listen carefully. Here's how it goes. And remember, you don't need to write this down because I'm going to give you a link to download it at the end. Okay, so here's the script. Hey, John, slight pause. John, this is Dennis. You're most likely going to hate me. I'm a freight broker. So do you want to hang up now? Or will you give me 30 seconds to tell you why I called? Okay, so now listen. Let's think about that for a second. I'm going to read it one more time because I want you to hear the different pieces of it. Hey, John. John, this is Dennis. You're most likely going to hate me. I'm a freight broker. So do you want to hang up now? Or will you give me 30 seconds to tell you why I'm calling? So why does this work? What is it about this script that works? Why did it work on me? And why do I truly believe it will work on logistics managers, shipping managers, transportation managers, and the like, right? Why will it work on shippers? And the reason being is this. One, it interrupts their pattern, okay? They're used to hearing salespeople use those generic sales scripts. And what happens is that automatically triggers a negative response. So it interrupts their pattern because they don't hear that every day. All right. So it's a little bit unusual. It's a little bit unique. Number two, it's very authentic. It's very transparent, which unfortunately a lot of salespeople aren't. They try to disguise why they're calling, or they don't disguise it at all. And either way, it triggers a negative reaction. So it's very transparent and honest. And then third, it gives control to the prospect, right? And it disarms them. Now, I'm not big on giving a lot of control to the prospect, but the reason why I like this version is because it disarms them. Whenever they pick up a call that sounds like a cold call, automatically, right? Their brain, their reptilian brain is triggered into a negative response. And those negative responses are immediate rejections, right? Typically, there's some form of immediate rejection. And those rejections come in the form of, oh, we're not interested, or, we're happy with our current providers, or we don't use brokers, right? Some version of those types of rejections. So if you've been getting a lot of rejection in the first 5 to 15 seconds of your sales call, you definitely want to consider using this pattern interrupt freight broker cold call script. Okay. Now, that's just the pattern interrupt. That's just to get their attention. So now at that point, if they say yes, you've now bought 30, 60, 90 seconds to go into your sales presentation. So that's step one, is to use the script. Hey, John, this is Dennis. You're most likely going to hate me. I'm a freight broker. So do you want to hang up now, or will you give me 30 seconds to tell you why I called? So we start there, right? So that's the cold call script to get their attention. Now from there, they're not going to just roll over and give you their freight. But if they say yes, you now have permission to give them a presentation, a quick reason why you're calling, right? So if they agree, you're going to use a compelling sales hook, right? You're going to use a compelling sales hook to, further get their attention and explain why you called, right? And the goal is to schedule a quick follow-up call, right? So now your question is, what is a compelling sales hook, Dennis? All right, well, a compelling sales hook, okay, is a way to differentiate yourself by using sales intelligence, or some sort of market intelligence or research that you've done and that you've gathered about the prospect or about the company or about the industry that's relevant and compelling, that allows you to once again stand out from the crowd. It gives them a reason to listen. The goal here with your cold call intro and with your sales hook is to be different, right? So here's what I want you to do really quick. Here, first of all, I'm going to give you the link where you guys can download this script before I forget. Let me just pull it up here on the screen real quick. freightbrokerbootcamp.com/best cold call. All right, so that's where you will go to get the cold call script. freightbrokerbootcamp.com/best cold call. All right. So here's what I want you to understand. There is no one size fits all best freight broker cold calling script. But here's what I can tell you. The secret, the challenge, the issue that freight brokers have with cold calling is the fact that they do not get their prospects' attention. And the reason why I love this cold call script is because it is a pattern interrupt. It is different, and it gives you permission. You either don't waste your time because they say no and hang up, or which is a filtering process, or they give you permission the next 30 seconds to explain why you're calling. And at that point, they're actually listening to you because they have decided that you are automatically different than the last 10 or 20 or 30 calls that they received. And I can promise you, it worked on me, and I have been sold. I've received hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of cold calls over the years. And rarely, if ever, do I ever listen to them past the first 15 to 30 seconds of that call. But this gentleman, because he interrupted my pattern, because he was different, he was able to get my attention. And we had a nice conversation for probably 5 minutes. And the reality is my door is now open for him to revisit me in the future. And who knows? Maybe he'll sell me freight broker sales training, or maybe I'll sell him sales training. But ultimately, the fact of the matter is, I've left that conversation with a positive feeling. I've left that conversation with a positive opinion and a first impression of that person because they were different, because they interrupted my pattern. So make sure you download that cold call script, freightbrokerbootcamp.com/best cold call. You'll get the free script. You can download it. Listen, if you guys are struggling with becoming a freight or with getting shippers as a freight broker, you're struggling with your freight broker cold calling, all I want you to do is I want you to check out my Freight Broker Sales Accelerator program. That is my freight broker sales coaching and mentoring program where I take that piece of my brain, I transplant it into your head, and I teach you all my favorite sales strategies, tactics, tools. But most importantly, it's the entire freight broker sales system that many of my clients have used to generate millions of dollars for their businesses. And I used myself to do over $200 million as a freight broker. So if you check that link out, you'll learn you'll learn the basics about the Freight Broker Sales Accelerator. You'll be able to get on the wait list. It's currently sold out, but you will get notified when new spots open up. And I hope you guys, I hope this works for you. I hope you guys test this out. Hit me up in the comments with any questions you guys have. And again, thank you for joining me for this week's Freight Broker Bootcamp Live. Okay, cool. So, all right, that was a little longer than I thought. All right, cool. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to jump right into Q&A. So if you guys have questions, now those questions could be about today's training. Those questions could be about anything related to freight broker sales, freight broker marketing, freight broker startup, cold calling, handling objections, software, anything freight broker startup or freight broker business growth related, feel free to ask. I will do my absolute best to try to answer any questions you have. If I can't answer the question, I'll try to point you in the right direction. But chances are I will not get to everybody's call today, depending upon how many people are live. But listen, hit me up in the comments. First, make sure you download that script. Okay. Download that script. Second of all, make sure you get on the wait list. If you are struggling with freight broker sales, you're struggling with getting a lot of rejection, you're struggling with getting some positive cash flow, you're struggling with getting your first 5 or 10 shippers and on your way to 7 figures in sales, I'm going to be honest with you, you're an absolute fool if you don't check out the Freight Broker Sales Accelerator. Tons of success stories. It is the absolute best program I've ever put together. It is not free. It is not cheap, but the return on investment for some of my students has been absolutely crazy. So, I mean, I had one of my students who had, or one of my clients who had come back and told me that he got a 50x return on investment. That means for every dollar he invested, he got $50 back. So let's imagine if he invested $10,000, right? That's a lot of money back in your pocket, return on investment wise. So I'm excited about the program. I love working, hand in hand, as a group, face to face with clients, and these VIP Zoom calls that we have. So cool. Let's jump into some of the questions. Eric asks a question. Are you asset-based or 3PL? What's a good response? Well, the truth is a good response. If you're asset-based, well, then feel free to tell them you're asset-based. If you're a broker who has trucks, then you're asset-based. If you're not asset-based and you're more of a broker or a 3PL, if you want to position as a 3PL. For those of you that are new, 3PL just means third-party logistics. A freight brokerage is a third-party logistics by definition. But many larger 3PLs have a whole suite of services, right? Maybe they've got warehousing, maybe they do international, maybe they do pick and pack, maybe they play into some sort of manufacturing component. Maybe there's all kinds of different things that can be done by a 3PL. Freight brokers are much more in the freight management side predominantly. So yeah, but yeah, that's the answer would be the truth, whatever the truth is. Okay. If you have a follow-up to that, Eric, let me know. What's the best response to a prospect that's had bad luck dealing with startup brokers? Okay. So you have a prospect who had a bad experience with startup brokers. And what's the response? Well, here's probably what you can do. All right, here's an idea. Here's a concept that you can use, right? So, how would I approach this? I'm trying to put myself a little bit more in your shoes as a startup, right? So, startup brokers. So there's kind of, there's the old adage, and I don't know, don't use this as the script, but I want you to kind of understand the framework of what we're talking about. It's the concept of overcoming an objection for anybody who's had a bad experience with anything. For example, if you went to a steak restaurant and your steak was tough and grizzly and fatty and it was just not what you expected, well, you're not going to stop eating steak. You're just going to stop eating at that restaurant. Now, I want you to understand kind of the framework. I want you to think about this. So that's a way you can kind of approach it. And then the key there is to identify what the bad experience was like. Get them to talk about that bad experience in detail so that you can understand exactly what went wrong. Did they give the load back last second? Did they come back and ask for more money? Did the load get double brokered? Did the load get stolen? Was the load picked up and delivered late? Was it a damage claim? What exactly happened that made that a bad experience? So you want to understand that. That's an important component. And then from there, I would address that specific issue that they had. And I would address that with the how. We've already mitigated that issue, right? We already have a standard operating procedure, and here's what we do, and here's how this works, and here's why it won't happen for you. And then I would also relate back on a personal level, a story where, something similar that happened with an existing client and how you overcame that, or how they were happy with what you were able to do. So we're going to add a little bit of third-party testimonial recommendation in there, right? A third-party story. So those are a few ideas. I mean, I can't give you an exact script because, again, I haven't had a conversation with that person, but my natural reaction is going to be, when I hear that, is to ask some questions and get them talking about exactly what happened so that I can isolate that objection. Because the objection isn't new brokers. The objection is what happened during that transaction that caused them pain or discomfort or money, right? So hopefully that helps a little bit, Brian. Question from Lewis. I filed my freight brokerage a year ago, but I'm having problems getting my surety bond for FMCSA. All right. So is there a question in there? I'm not sure what the question is. Hit me with a question. I mean, you looking for a freight broker surety bond? Here's what I would recommend if you're looking for a bond. freightbrokerbootcamp.com/bond. I can't guarantee they're going to give you a bond, but I can guarantee you they've given probably more. They probably do. They're a partner that we've worked with for many years with my client, with my students, and they've given hundreds and hundreds of my students bonds. And they've probably done more freight broker bonds than anybody in the industry. So if you go to that link, you fill it out, you send it to them, they're going to know you came from me. They're going to know you're from my community. And I promise they're going to take care of you. Now, I can't guarantee they're going to give you a bond. I can't guarantee what the rate is. I don't know what your credit is. I don't know what your story is. I don't know where you're located. I don't know any of that. So, but I can tell you that they're the company that I highly, highly recommend when it comes to freight broker bonds. So I hope that helps. Okay, Mark asks, I've always done great with sales. I'm 6 months into the new brokerage and struggling, keeping my head up, checking out your program now. Great, Mark. Awesome. Yeah, if you have a little bit of sales experience in another industry, that can translate into the freight brokerage industry. But the Freight Broker Sales Accelerator is a freight broker sales system specifically designed for freight brokers and freight agents. Okay. So the lingo that we use in the program is all with your target market in mind, which is logistics managers, traffic managers, transportation managers, warehouse managers, shipping managers, the challenges and issues associated with them, the objections associated with the industry. So it's tailor-made to the freight broker industry. Okay. So that's the reason why it's a little different. Listen, I probably got 20 or more sales books up on my shelf that I've read over the years about sales. And some of those techniques and strategies will cross over. Others don't. Perfect example. When you've got a script that's designed for a consumer, like a real estate script or a car insurance script or selling a car to somebody, or you've got strategies that are specifically designed to that industry, those are not going to cross over into the freight brokerage industry very well, right? Because the audience is different. When you're selling B2B, when you're selling to a business, when you're selling to somebody in logistics, when you're selling to somebody who's a mid-level manager, right? It's a different strategy than selling to a consumer. And that's the reason why I put the program together, right? Because there was a lot of gaps in the material that I had learned over the years, and I had to fill those gaps. And I remember being in your shoes. So that's why I put it together. But thank you for the kind words, and I think you're going to enjoy. Get on the wait list. Check it out. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Lewis. Huge fan. Thank you so much. All right. Brittany says, trying to become a freight agent. How do you find your niche? Okay. So here's what I'm going to suggest. Go to my blog, freightbrokerbootcamp.com/blog. If I can find it, I'll put it up on the screen if I can find it, which I probably can't because I got too many links in here from past stuff. Here it is, freightbrokerbootcamp.com/blog. Okay. And then in the search bar of the blog, there's a little bar there where you can search for the different articles and content. Search niche, NICH. You're going to find a post where I walk through step by step by step by step on exactly how to identify and find your freight niche. Okay. I'll summarize it really quick, but that's a very detailed breakdown, including a video. But I'm going to summarize it for you very quick. You can identify your niche by industry or the product, right? The steel industry, the bottled beverage industry, the produce industry, right? By the industry or the product. You can identify your niche by the geography, like Buffalo or the Southeast or the Pacific Northwest or Texas, right? You can use a geography. The other component you can use is by equipment type. So you want to focus in on vans, or you want to focus in on refrigerated, or you want to focus in on flatbeds, or, expedited, right? Something of those lines, right? So it's a different type of equipment or service. But I believe the best is to create a hybrid of two or more of those. And I'll tell the story again. I've told it 1,000 times, but you've never asked this question, so I'll share my answer with you. And the answer is, let me pull your question back up here. All right. So when I started my freight brokerage back in 2003, our first niche that we pursued was van. Went on a dry van, 53-foot dry van, and it originated in the Northeast. So it was a hybrid, equipment and geography, New York, PA, New Jersey, all the way up through the Northeast. And if it was going west or south, okay, out of the Northeast, that was our niche. Okay. Kind of sounds weird, but what it allowed us to do was it allowed us to target and identify the correct audience, the correct potential shippers and leads. And it allowed us to understand the rates associated with that, because the rates for outbound New England, Northeast area are different than outbound or inbound Florida, or outbound, inbound in a different region, right? Because the rates are different because it's supply and demand. It allowed us to identify and build a network of carriers that were specifically in need of freight out of the Northeast, right? So there was a lot of synergies that allowed us to do that. So that was our first niche, and then we strategically expanded into other niches over time. So I hope that helps. Ryan asks, what are some of the prospecting tools, technologies you would recommend? Yeah, let's see. One of my favorites is Apollo. Okay. Apollo is a database as well as a suite of tools where you can if you use this link, freightbrokerbootcamp.com/free leads, you can sign up for Apollo with just your email and no credit card. Okay. You don't need a credit card in order to sign up, which is cool. So there's a free version that gives you access to tons of data. So if you're looking for shippers in the bottled beverage niche, or if you're looking for shippers in the steel niche, or you're looking for shippers in the oil and gas niche, or whatever niche or industry you're looking for, you can identify shippers that way, right? So there's a lot of different filters you can use, and it's a great tool. So that would be one of the tools I would highly recommend. You can sign up for free at that link. Again, these are partner links, and some of these links that I share with you, we may be an affiliate or some sort of partner with them, but I highly vet every single company that I recommend, and I would never, ever recommend anything that I absolutely did not believe in. But with this link, you can get signed up for free, not even a trial, but for free with no credit card. Now, there are other services and other higher level data that you can get access to if you want to pay for it, but it's not required. Okay. So that would be one for sure. Another would be Lucia. So Lucia, Lusha, is a Chrome plugin. And the reason why I like using it is because when I'm on LinkedIn and I land on a prospect's page, right, or I land on a potential lead on their profile, it will pull up data about the company, and it'll even pull up contact information sometimes. Now, not all of that information is free either, but sometimes you can get an email address or a phone number. But I really like Lucia because it integrates really well with Chrome. It's a Chrome plugin. And whenever I'm on LinkedIn, I land on somebody's profile and boom, I can instantly see whether they have their contact information, and it costs me nothing. Okay. So Lucia is another good one. I think another one would be, let's see. Okay, here's another one. Josh Lyles, who's the founder of Sales-CRM, friend of mine. I've used his product. I've seen his product. I have students who have used his product, and everybody has rave reviews. So if you're looking for a sales CRM that's specifically designed for freight brokers and freight agents, go to freightbrokerbootcamp.com/CRM. Okay. You can sign up for a free trial. Okay. With no credit card. Okay. So a free trial with no credit card. I'm pretty sure there's no credit card if you use this link. And you'll get access to a CRM. Now, a CRM is a customer relationship management software that allows you to manage all of your sales and prospecting data. Now, it's not a TMS. Let's not confuse it with a TMS. That's a freight management system. That's a transportation management system. This is more of a sales lead and a sales workflow system. Okay. So you'll be able to save all your leads, all the conversations, all the emails, all the quotes, everything that you do with a prospect in those 1, 2, 3, 5, 10, 20, 50 calls or 50 engagements that you have with them along the sales journey, right? And even after they're a customer, you can save information in there that will help you to better serve that customer and help you to sell more services to that customer. So yeah, that would be freightbrokerbootcamp.com/CRM. So those are three tools that I think you'll find very valuable, and I trust, I trust emphatically. I've done a lot of vetting and research on them. So those would probably be three tools. Let me see if is there any others. Hold on. Okay, so you were specifically talking about prospecting tools. So those are probably three that I would recommend, Ryan. Hope that helps. Eric, it feels like not being asset-based is a deal breaker for some prospects. I want to know how I can convince them that I don't need asset-based to provide benefit to them. Okay, so here's the thing, Eric. I understand that you will run into it, especially in a down market, right? Because right now we had the market goes up and down, right? We know that the market is very cyclical, right? Sometimes it's cyclical within a given month. Sometimes it's cyclical within a given decade, right? It trends up and trends down, right? But the reality is we just came off of an all-time freight boom in 2021, right? Where, 20 and 21, where freight was crazy, right? Even into early 2022. And since then, it's been trending down. And so what you'll find is in a trending down market, shippers will sometimes want to focus direct on assets. Now, the funny thing is when it starts trending up, they want brokers left, right, and center because the market's tight and there's no trucks available, right? So they're more than willing to work with brokers. So sometimes shippers will tighten up in a down market. So here's what I want you to understand. Your job is not to convince people that don't have a need to buy from you. Now, I know that's hard to hear because you'd love to convert every single one of those prospects who tells you we don't use brokers, all right, or we want asset-based into customers. I understand that. But here's the problem. The more time you spend with people who don't want what you're offering, the less time you're spending finding and engaging with prospects who do. And I know it's a very simplistic response, but the reality is this, there's this old saying, a man convinced against his will is of the same opinion still, right? That's what just came to mind. I don't know where that came from, but it's an old saying that I had heard. So your job is not to convince people who don't have a need. Now, could you try to differentiate yourself, and could you try to explain why you're different and why they should consider you? Sure. But that's all there's no canned rebuttal for that. The only way that you can really try to break that rebuttal down is to try to ask some questions and try to gather some sales intelligence on why that is. Now, that's sometimes hard because when somebody gives you an objection and they say, we don't use brokers, and you say, why? They say, I don't have time for this. Boom, right? So you have to be smart about how you ask. So what I like to do, Eric, and you've probably heard this before because you were a part of my Freight Broker Sales Accelerator, is I like to use third-party stories and third-party references and third-party testimonials, particularly a third-party story. So I might lead into it and say, Eric, I totally respect what you're saying, but I have a client who we work with now, and we've worked with very successfully for many years. And they said the exact same thing. And the reason why they were, they kind of put that policy down on why they didn't use brokers was X, Y, and Z. And what I explained to them was A, B, and C. And so what happens at that point, rather than you just tucking your tail and hanging up, it gives you an opportunity to kind of position why you're different. And I can't give you those answers because I don't know why you're different. I don't know, exactly what you should say, but that's a framework that you can use to address the objection. But what I don't want you to do, and what I don't think anybody should do, is chase prospects who don't have a need, right? There's a fundamental understanding in sales. No need equals no sale. If you don't have a need, there is no sale. Now, can you follow back up with those prospects periodically, 60, 90, 180 days? Sure, absolutely. And you should. Just because they told you no then doesn't mean that when the market turns that they won't be using brokers or that they won't need brokers, right? So I don't know if that helps, Eric. I'm sure you probably heard, I probably told you some of this before, or you probably heard it in the Freight Broker Sales Accelerator. But remember, your job is not to convince people that don't have a need. Your job is to find people who have a need and then fill that gap. Okay? So I hope that helps. You're welcome, buddy. I've really enjoyed working with you. Okay, Alexander, everybody is a manager these days, but not everybody knows how to do their job. Okay, cool. I'm still scrolling here. Okay, Paul asks, I tried freight brokering, and although I had potential leads, I gave up. Next time I want to hire freight agents and have them do the heavy lifting. All right, Paul, so I understand your point, and I understand why you might feel that way. But let's kind of reverse the roles a little bit. Let's think about if you were a freight agent, especially if you were an experienced freight agent, and a freight broker approached you, or either or you had a conversation with a freight broker who didn't have any customers and had really not had any real success on their own, would you as the agent want to work for that company? I'm just putting it out there. Because me personally, I wouldn't do business with any company that wasn't that didn't at least have some fundamental established business. They have a sales process. They've got a customer onboarding process. They've got a carrier onboarding process. They're actively moving freight. So if you don't have, if you think you're going to just launch an agent program from scratch when you have no processes and no credibility and no freight and no customers, it's going to be an uphill battle. It really is. Now, I'm not saying it can't be done. I just think it'll be easier for you, Paul, to learn the sales skills you need in order to land your first 5 or 10 shippers and start moving on your way to 7 figures. And then once you establish that fundamental, right, or that baseline, then if you chose, you could bring on freight agents or you could bring on employees or whatever you want to do. So, that's just my 2 cents. I'm just sharing with you a perspective. I want you to kind of reverse your thought process and put yourself in the agent position and why would they want to work with you? Because the hard part about having a freight agent program is building a product that people actually want and that people can actually benefit from. And as a freight broker startup, a true startup, I never recommend a true startup start with an agent program. I think you need to build a basic fundamental of having some of your own shippers and having all those processes and building your credit. And then, listen, I didn't have an agent program for 3 years. I started in 2000, it was almost 3 years. Started in late 2003, didn't offer our agent program until 2016. So, we built the business, internally at first, and then we converted into the agent model. Now, I knew that was the plan early on. But the reality is we had to kind of build that product. We had to build our reputation. We had to have something to sell. And so that's just my 2 cents. I hope it helps. Centel, how are you, buddy? You're on a break from cold calling. Awesome. Centel is another one of my Freight Broker Sales Accelerator clients. Okay, Anonymous, how can I ask a shipper for a referral after doing a load? Okay, so here's what I don't recommend. If you get a shipper and you move the first load, I don't recommend that you go to them and ask them for a testimonial. And here's why. I love your thought process of wanting to get testimonials from shippers, from clients. I absolutely love that. And I think you absolutely should try to get a testimonial from every single shipper that you do business with. But after you move your first load is probably not the best time. And here's the reason why. Because even though you move that load, all right, let's say here's 100% trust, here's 0 trust. You built enough trust with them to get the load, and now you've delivered it, so your trust has went up. But they don't completely trust you yet because they don't have enough of a history with you. They don't have enough experience with you. So I probably wouldn't do it after the first load. But after you've built had some experience with them and you've built a reputation and you've done what you said you were going to do and you've delivered on time and you've dotted all the I's and crossed all the T's, I think you should go to the shipper. And it's very simple. You don't need to make this complicated. What I typically always tried to do is I always tried to make it when they had given me some sort of positive feedback, like, oh, thank you, you did a great job. Or, hey, I really appreciate you bailing me out. Or, hey, that's a really great rate. Yeah, we'll book it with you. Or some sort of positive experience, right? Waiting for them to mention a positive. And then at that point, I just simply say, hey, Joe, can I ask a favor? And in most cases at that point, if they come off a positive note, they're going to say, sure, what can I do? Listen, it would really help me out if I could get a simple 1 or 2 sentence recommendation, testimonial. All you have to do is email it to me. It's really, really simple. Matter of fact, I'll send you over a few recommendations and testimonials from other clients so you can kind of hear what they had to say, but I would really appreciate it. Could you do me that favor? Right? Something as simple as that. Now, if you don't have any testimonials, don't send them over. Ask them for a testimonial. So here's what's going to happen. 70 or 80% of the time, they're not going to send you the testimonial. They're not going to email you the testimonial because they got too busy. So you're going to want to follow up and beat them over the head. Don't be negative, be positive, and just say, Joe, whether this in phone or next conversation you have with them or via email, I really appreciate you doing that favor. And if they haven't gotten back to you and haven't done it, say, I took the liberty of writing a short testimonial, 1 or 2 sentences, just based on the knowledge that you have with them. I took the liberty of writing this short testimonial. Feel free to edit it and reply back with yours. I truly appreciate it. So what I'm doing is I'm making it very easy for them. So if you write a testimonial that says something like, hey, listen, we really love doing business with Joe. He's done a great job for us. We really appreciate how he has attention to detail. He's great at communicating. We love working with Joe, right? Something like that. Something simple, right? It doesn't have to be crazy. And then you send that to them. A lot of times what they're going to do is they're going to say, okay, that sounds great. And now because they approved it, you can use that as their words. A lot of times why they don't email you back the testimonial is because they get busy or they don't know exactly what to say. They're not used to writing these things, so they don't know what it's supposed to look like. Okay. So those are a couple of concepts, ideas, little hacks that you can use and a little bit of a kind of a framework on how to get testimonials from clients. Okay. So I hope that helps. Good question. Brittany, what do you recommend looking for when trying to look for a company to work for as an agent? Okay. Let me see something really quick. Maybe I can help you out here. Hold on. Hold on a minute. I think I have something for you. Okay. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to give you, shoot. I wonder where that is. Hold on a minute. I have a download for you. Let me see. Nope, that's not it. I'm trying to think here. Let me see something really quick. I might be able to find it. It's a download that'll give you a framework of questions to ask and things to look for. Let me see. Hold on. Just give me 1 second. Okay, here you go. Boom. All right. Hold on. I found it. Give me a second. All right. I'm going to put this in the comments. Hopefully it shows up for all of you. This is a link where you can download 17 important questions to ask before joining a freight agent program. Okay. So it might not be the exact thing you were looking for. I think you were asking for something similar to that. But what you look for, and these questions will cover what you're looking for in reverse, right? So what type of technology, how long have they been in business, things of that nature. So this is what I think will guide you much better than me just telling you, oh shit, did I lose you? Damn it. Oh, I lost you. Sorry, guys. I don't know if you guys were, how much of that did I lose you? I think I lost you guys. Hold on a minute. Let me see. My cam is, oh, here we go. Okay, we're back up. I have no idea what happened. All right. So did you guys get that link that I sent you? It's a link. Hit me up in the comments and let me know you guys got that link. And that you guys can hear me. I don't even know if you guys can hear me or not. Let me know. Give me some feedback here in the comments. Let me know. Can you hear me? Did you guys get that link to the 17 questions you need to ask before joining a freight agent program? Give me some feedback. Okay. Did you get the link? Eric, can you see the link in there? It should be posted on, I think, Facebook and YouTube. It should have went on LinkedIn too, but I'm not sure. Okay, you can hear me, but did you get the link? Okay, let me try it again. Okay. All right, cool. So you guys did get the link. Some of you got the link. Okay, cool. So that's what I would recommend, would be to use that framework of those questions in order to qualify companies that you're looking for. Okay. So I hope that helps. All right, good. Perfect. Okay, awesome. I'm glad you got that. All right. Let's see what else we got here. Any other questions? Okay, here's a question from Arthur. Dennis, my asset-based company is struggling getting backhaul loads back to the West Coast. Most of the loads are paying under $1 a mile, full truckload. How do I find loads that pay at least $2 a mile? Okay. Okay, Arthur. So here's the thing. Remember, what determines price? I don't care if it's bottled water or, this is bottled water. I don't care if it's a beverage. I don't care if it's a computer. I don't care if it's a house. I don't care if it's a car. I don't care if it's a, whatever. What determines a freight lane? What determines price is supply and demand. Let me explain it to you. The supply of loads or the supply of trucks in relation to the number of loads. So if you have more trucks than loads, okay, then rates go down. If you have more loads than trucks, then rates go up. Okay? Because more loads are competing for less trucks versus more trucks competing for less loads. So supply and demand determines the rates. Brokers don't determine the rates, shippers don't determine the rates, and carriers don't determine the rates. But carriers probably have the biggest impact and influence on rates, right? Because ultimately they've got to accept the rate or not, right? And so if they reject the rate, then that could potentially, and if enough carriers reject the rate, then that causes the rates to go up. That's how it works. So supply and demand is what determines rates. So you're not going to get $2 a mile on a lane where everybody else is getting $1 a mile unless you're doing something very different. You have to be doing something different. You have to have some sort of value add. You have to have some sort of service that makes you different to make your supply different than the demand. Okay, so you've got to increase demand. So one way, and I'm going to give you an example, but I don't know that this is what you want to hear, but I'm going to give you an example just so I can illustrate. So if you had a team, okay, so if you're running van loads from East Coast to West Coast and the average is $1 a mile, okay, if you want to increase demand, right, for that, then what if you were a team that could run that same lane? There's going to be less teams available than there are going to be just one driver vans, correct? So that's going to bring the rate up. Okay. The other thing you could do is you could, and these are just giving you ideas, you could also do like a kind of like a pedal cart run. You could consolidate LTLs on the east that are going west, and then you could deliver them throughout the west. So you might put on, 10 different LTL shipments that are going throughout or partials that are going throughout, maybe you're going from Boston and then your first drop in Chicago and then your next drop is in, Houston, and then your next drop is in Phoenix, and then your next drop is in LA. I mean, that's just a hypothetical. So you could do like a multi-stop load, or you could consolidate different LTLs in a region, and then you could deconsolidate those and deliver those throughout the country. So I'm just giving you some ideas. But here's what you're not going to be able to do. You're not going to be able to get $2 a mile when everybody else is getting $1 a mile unless you're doing something different. Okay? You have to increase the demand for your service. Otherwise, you have to take the rate or close to the rate that everybody else is getting as an asset-based carrier. Same thing with shippers, same thing with brokers. Okay? So I hope that works. I hope that helps. Okay, if the link isn't posted on LinkedIn, I'll post it after. Okay, I'll post it after this live. So, all right, so here's another question from Brittany. When starting up, will I have to post loads on the load board so I can get carriers? Most likely, yes. Most brokers and most agent startups use load boards to gather market intelligence about rates or rate intelligence, sourcing trucks, and finding carriers that will deliver their freight. That's where we start. Now, your goal is to eventually not have to use the load boards in order to move your freight because you'll have established relationships with carriers that can service the specific lanes and needs that your shippers have. But when you start out, in most cases, you're going to need a load board like Truckstop or DAT, okay? And or there's tons of others, you can use those, but they have available trucks, and that's where you're going to find them. It's going to be very hard for you to just, offer a load. See, carriers have specific lanes that they like to run. So just because you have a freight going from Buffalo to, you have freight going from Buffalo to Atlanta, doesn't mean that a carrier out of Buffalo wants to run that lane. And it doesn't mean that a carrier out of Atlanta wants to run that lane. They might be focused on more regional Southeast, or they might be focused on going to the West Coast, or they may be focused on going to Chicago. So the load board is the best way to identify carriers as a freight broker, freight agent startup that want to go to where you pick up and deliver to where your load is picking up and delivering. Because when you post the load, you're going to post Buffalo to Atlanta. And that carrier is going to see that load posted and they're going to call on it or they're going to reply to it. You're going to see their trucks posted Buffalo to Atlanta. You're going to call on those trucks. So it's easier to make a match as a freight broker, freight agent startup using a load board than it is just randomly trying to call somebody and ask them if they want to haul your load. Okay. But then eventually you're going to want to try to, over time, as you develop these relationships and rapport, you're not going to post loads. Like if I know I have a load from Buffalo to Atlanta and I've got 3 or 4 carriers that I've used before to haul this load, I'm not going to post the load and just randomly pick some carrier that I've never done business with. I'm going to call those 3 or 4 carriers first to give them preference on it because I already have an established relationship. I've got a contract. We've got some history. We have all that. Now, if they don't have the capacity to do it, then I may have to post the load eventually, but your goal is to work away from the load boards. But all brokers use the load boards in some amount. When you're new, it's 100%. When you're established, it might get down to be more like 10, 20, 30%. But all brokers need a load board because they need spot market intelligence and they need spot market capacity that doesn't necessarily fit into their current, what they currently have as capacity. You can see even the largest brokers in the world still post loads. Total Quality Logistics post loads. Echo post loads. CH post loads. I mean, right? So they're still posting loads and they have thousands and thousands and tens of thousands of carriers they've done business with. So hope that helps. Question from Sentinel. Hey, Dennis, I've established a relationship with carriers, but no freight. Is it legal to co-broker freight? Well, it's legal to co-broker freight, but it's not ethical to double broker freight. So let me explain to you the difference. Co-brokering is when 2 brokers work together. So I'm an originating broker and I have a shipper who needs a flatbed move from A to B. And that's not necessarily what I specialize in, but I work with another broker. We have a contract that's very transparent where that broker has flatbed carriers and I broker it to him for $1,000, right? And he then sells that to his carrier for whatever rate he has. He makes a small margin. I make a small margin, but it's a transparent partnership where we're co-brokering to one carrier to benefit the shipper. Okay, so that's co-brokering. Double brokering is where I, as the broker, give the load to a carrier, and then that carrier, without my knowledge or authorization, rebrokers that load to another broker or to another carrier, and it causes this loss of control and this daisy chain effect and this highly, can be very difficult situation where you lose control of the load, right? So it's the double brokering is the unauthorized rebrokering of a load. So if you're a broker and you've got carriers, I'm not sure how you are going to co-broker. Is the carrier going to give you loads, or are you going to give the carrier loads? If you're giving the carrier loads, then those loads have to come from somewhere. Either you have a relationship with a broker who's willing to co-broker to you, or you have your own shippers. But co-brokering is not illegal. I do not recommend, and I've always been this way, I do not recommend freight broker startups using co-brokering to build their business. I just don't. You need control of the shipper. You need control of the truck. In order to build that business, that needs to be the fundamental core principles in order to build a successful freight brokerage. Okay? So is there a unique situation where maybe you're specialized in van and you've got a specific shipper that has a lot of flatbeds and you have a good relationship with flatbed loads, and you work a co-broker relationship with another broker who specializes in flatbed because they've got the carriers and the experience? You make a small margin, they make a small margin, and the service is high quality. That's a possibility. That's something that I would entertain. But to try to build your business co-brokering, I don't recommend it. Hope that helps. Thanks, Brittany. Appreciate it. Appreciate the kind words. Danny asks, little advice here. Having trouble finding shippers, not being picky at this point, just looking for a start. Have been searching in all industries. So you're having a hard time finding shippers, or you're having a hard time landing shippers and getting them to give you freight? If you're having a hard time finding shippers, well, then I would recommend going to where was it? Oh, freightbrokerbootcamp.com/free leads. Sign up for Apollo. It's free. You don't need a credit card. You just need an email. You'll be able to use a database. You'll be able to search and slice and dice and filter manufacturers, distributors, importers, exporters, people that have freight based on specific industries. Now they have more than freight. I mean, they have millions of companies in their database, but a lot of them are manufacturers, producers, shippers. So that's what I would recommend for finding them. In regards to selling them, in regards to cold calling them, that's part of what we covered today, right? So you'd have to have a more specific question if you wanted me to entertain that. And we're going to be wrapping up because it's already after the hour. Aram asks, what's the top industries for start? So you're talking about shippers. Well, the most popular industries are probably food and beverage, steel, building supplies, oil and gas, import, export. Those are just kind of some niches. I do a search in Google for top industries by freight volume. That's what I would do. And search. You're going to find a bunch of different industries. And some of those industries might shock you, but some of the ones I shared with you are the most popular, right? You can have building supplies, you can have textiles, you could have food and beverage, you could have, retail, more consumer oriented, consumer goods. And there's all kinds of stuff. Electronics, you could do high value freight. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff you can do, but the top industries, I would search for top industries by freight tonnage or freight spend, something like that. Search Google there, and I think you'll get some good information. All right, guys, listen, that's going to wrap it up. If I didn't get to your question, I apologize. Come back next week on the next Freight Broker Bootcamp Live. In the meantime, if you did not get the cheat sheet, okay, for today's training, check out freightbrokerbootcamp.com/best cold call. That'll give you the script that I shared with you, and you'll be able to download it, be able to use it, be able to tweak it. I believe it's one of the best scripts I've ever heard to get your prospects' attention and to buy you the opportunity to present the value that you have by using a compelling sales hook. Listen, I hope you guys enjoyed this training. If you did, hit the like button, share the stream. comment what you thought about this training. And I truly, truly appreciate you guys being here. Make sure you're here next Monday for the next Freight Broker Bootcamp Live. Have an awesome day. Have an awesome week. And we'll see you guys next week.